Welcome to Business Math. Today happens to be April 9th. We're going to talk about depreciation some more. Let's take a quick example of depreciation. And this is an assignment that you're familiar with. At least you're kind of familiar with this if you've taken my class for personal finance. What we're going to do is we're going to determine the depreciation on my wife's car. So this is at Kelley Blue Book, and so what we're going to do is, what should I pay for a used car? Okay, and I want to know, I know which car I want. It's my wife's 2006 Pontiac Vibe. So you go to 2006, you go to Pontiac, you go to Vibe, the mileage, it does matter. It is optional, but you get a more accurate picture. Her car has 33,000 miles on it. And we do need zip code. Why does it need zip code, Rachel?
So that you can find out what area it's in and maybe get a better price or something.
Oh yeah, I'll give you 2 points for that. It's what it is. It's cars are worth different values in different parts of the country. So in other words, for example, a car without air conditioning way up in northern Minnesota, that's not a big deal. Wow, even when we get a kick out of that when we go up there in the summertime, and up in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, this summer we're going to head to northern Michigan. When we head way up there and it does hit 90 degrees, what's funny is everybody will have their windows rolled down, even when it's 90 degrees up. Because it just doesn't hit 90 degrees hardly ever, and it's almost like you can see the people driving their cars trying to soak up some of that 90-degree weather because they just had a snowstorm in May. Like last May, my brother and his family in Rochester, Minnesota, had about 18 inches of snow in May. So anyway, in different parts of the country, cars are worth different amounts. Now, if you're trying to buy a car in Texas without air conditioning, or even Oklahoma, good luck trying to sell that, right? It's going to be a difficult thing. All right, well then you got to know which type it is, and you can expand these to see what it is. And is it the Sport Wagon? Is it the GT? Which one is it? It's not the GT. So we're going to pick. We're going to choose this particular style. The powertrain, it is a 4-liter or a 4-cylinder 1.8-liter engine. It's a manual 5-speed. It's front-wheel drive. We're going to add the option. Hers does not have StabiliTrak, but it does have the automatic braking system. It has air conditioning. Does not have power windows, power door locks. It does have cruise. It does have power steering, tilt, AM, FM stereo. It has a CD player. It has dual airbags. Hers does not have OnStar. Does not have front side. Doesn't have power seats. Doesn't have leather. Doesn't have sunroof. Doesn't have rear spoiler. Doesn't have a roof rack. There. Done. So this is going to tell us. In fact, we get a choice now. Let's just say buy from a private party. Okay. And we're also going to have our condition. You notice for excellent, I don't know how well you can read this, but for excellent it says has never had any paint touch-ups or body work. That's not true, because we loaned this car to my son-in-law. He drove it up from Alva to Hartner and encountered a deer. Did $6,000 worth of damage, but we got it fixed. So it definitely is not excellent. And let's see. Yeah, we'll give it very good. All right. So, there's a few other things that involve depreciation. Well, you tell me. What are some of the things that involve, because that's what we're talking about in Chapter 14, what are some of the things that involve depreciation or that cause depreciation? Something that makes one car maybe even depreciate faster than another car. All right, Courtney, you get first shot at this one. I'm sorry?
How old it is?
Yes, how old it is. So if a car is very old, it's going to have usually more depreciation on it than if it's a new car. Now, also, one of the things we're going to talk about today is that cars do not depreciate at the same rate every year, do they? In fact, the fastest depreciation is where in the life of the car, Courtney? When does the fastest depreciation take place?
First year?
Yes, the first year. That's just devastating. And in fact, on motorhomes, it's even more devastating than it is on cars. The first year of a $200,000 motorhome, that first year, it's going to depreciate probably $50,000, just right out the window. So a 1-year-old motorhome that costs $200,000, brand new, only costs $150,000. Only, right, Rachel?
Only.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm starting to sound like a rich person. Only $150,000. Dad, yeah. All right. Let's see. So age of a car affects depreciation. What else affects the depreciation of a car, Robert?
The quality.
Yes, the quality of the car. And I'm assuming by that is, what kind of shape is it in? Was it well taken care of? Or, or did you never wash it? Did you never clean it? Did you never fix anything when something broke? So that's going to be a big factor. How about the number of miles on a car? Does that affect the depreciation of the car, Rachel?
Yes.
In fact, that's a good answer. And in fact, on this particular car, you could actually watch the depreciation. You could actually watch the depreciation if I change the miles to 133,000 miles. So here, in very good condition, according to Kelley Blue Book, this is KBB.com, it's $8,899. All right? $8,899. Now, this is going to be quite shocking. You are going to be surprised at this. Of course, Rachel's not going to be surprised because she knows me the best of the three of you. Rachel knows what a cheap son of a gun that I am. So she's not going to be surprised that we only paid something ridiculous like $9,400 for this car. Brand spanking new. This was, now you say, Dr. G, how'd you get it so cheaply? Answer, well, we bought it brand new when it was 1 year old, if that makes any sense. In other words, it's a 2006. We bought it in 2007, so this was a leftover, okay? It was a leftover that nobody wanted, all right? It has black interior, all right? Not too many people in Oklahoma like black interior. It did have air conditioning, so that was all we cared. Oh, it was a manual transmission, so a lot of people don't like a manual transmission. And let's see, what else? Oh, I had all these rebates that I saved up because of our credit card rebates. So it was a rather unusual yeah, $9,400 for a brand new car, rather unusual price, okay? And now the memory is slowly coming back. I think it was $9,700, sorry. Because I paid $9,700 for that car, and I paid something like $10,300 for my car, and my 2009 Pontiac Vibe, I paid more for it. But anyway, the point is, that is a very unusual price. All right? So, wow. When we compute the total amount of depreciation that happened, how do you do that, Rachel?
I subtracted what you bought it for minus the 8899.
That is correct. That is exactly how you compute depreciation, or for total depreciation. So you take what you paid for it minus what it's currently worth. Let's see, today's 9. And what did you get for that figure, Rachel?
$801.
$801. Wow. That's just shocking, isn't it? $801. That's not even normal, is it? $801. And now, if you want to compute annual depreciation, I probably shouldn't have picked my wife's car as an example. I knew it was going to be very low depreciation, but I didn't realize it was going to be that low. Now we have $801. It's a 2006 model. We're in the year 2014, so that's 8 years. So the annual depreciation is how much, Wyatt?
801.
No, that's the total depreciation. 801
Oh,
is the
for
total.
oh,
We
that's
want
for
the
the
annual
full time.
depreciation. Go ahead.
What's the annual depreciation?
$100.13.
There you go. $100.13. Wow, that is not normal, is it? Definitely not normal. So I probably should have picked a different vehicle, but I just thought that'd be interesting. I knew it was going to be low. Well, that's how you do annual depreciation. You take the total that's how you do annual depreciation on a straight line method. You take the total depreciation divided by the number of years. Now, just for laughs and giggles, we could switch that, the mileage. I thought I saw, yeah, there's a mileage change. I can change that mileage to 133,000 miles, and just for the fun of it, see what that does to the value of the car. That's going to definitely increase its depreciation, isn't it? There you go. Oh my goodness, that did make quite a bit of difference, didn't it? It made about a little over $4,000 worth of difference on the depreciation, okay? There are a few other things that involve depreciation of a vehicle. One of them is the model of the vehicle. For example, Pontiac is no longer a brand that's being made. That's it. It's dead. It's over. Pontiac is done. General Motors decided to not make the Pontiac anymore. Even though the Pontiac Vibe and the Toyota Matrix are virtually identical, except for the fact that the Pontiac symbol is sitting on the Pontiac Vibe, and I was talking to someone that, thinks that Toyotas drive on water or something, in other words, that they're perfect. By the way, today the news has just released that there's a recall. Don't get me wrong, I love Toyotas. I think they're fantastic. In fact, that's why I bought a virtual Toyota, let's see how many times. I bought 2 Pontiac Vides, which those are, in essence, Toyota Matrix. Same parts on the vehicle. In fact, that's why when the Toyota got recalled, the Pontiac Vibe got recalled with it. It didn't happen to be the 2009 or the 2006, so I was okay there. But it turns out that a discontinued brand like Pontiac versus a Toyota, all right, even if they're virtually identical, the Toyota Matrix and the Toyota and the Pontiac Vibe, even though they're virtually identical, which one do you think depreciates faster, Robert?
Probably the Pontiac.
Yeah, absolutely. See, because a lot of people don't know that a Pontiac Vibe is a very reliable vehicle. They know that a Toyota is a very reliable vehicle. It's very unusual, in fact, that Toyota, that made big news. That made national news that Toyota is having 6 million vehicles recalled. But even in spite of that fact, people go, well, it must be something minor, and so you listen to the news, and so unlike GM, Toyota didn't wait till people started dying. You know, that was GM style. GM waited till, you know, on the latest fiasco that's going on with GM. They knew people were dying way back in 2008, right when GM was hoping and praying for a government takeover of General Motors and a bailout from General Motors, and depending on how cynical you are, they knew about it, that problem with all those Chevy Cobalts with the ignition. They knew people were dying, and they didn't release that information. If they would have released that information, do you think that would have helped them get their government bailout? Wyatt, what do you think?
No, not at all.
No, not at all. So if you're an old, cynical person like I am, I think that's why they didn't release it way back then. They just tried to keep the cap on this information for so long, and so now they hired the CEO of General Motors, and her answer to everything was, it was like Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Heroes, you know, I know nothing. That was the answer to every question when the CEO of General Motors was put in front of the Senate for the investigation. Every answer, I know nothing. Well, anyway, so Toyota brand has a very, very powerful brand to it as far as reliability. So its depreciation is a lot slower than the depreciation of a Toyota or of a Pontiac Vibe. I'm not going to take time to show you that, but that's the truth. But anyway, actually what you can do is tap into that, and you'll find out that you could buy a Pontiac Vibe, a used Pontiac Vibe, for way cheaper than you could a Toyota Matrix, just for that perception reason. All right. Well, do cars depreciate the same every year, Courtney? No, they do not. In fact, just to review, the fastest depreciation occurs when, Shay? Yeah, at the first part of the ownership of the vehicle, doesn't it? That's when it happens the fastest. So, the IRS, good old Internal Revenue Service, the reason this concept of depreciation is so important is because the Internal Revenue Service allows businesses to depreciate out their vehicles, cars, trucks, vans. They allow companies to depreciate out their computers. They will let businesses depreciate their. Now you can't depreciate land. All right, that's one thing that the IRS, 99.999% of the time, they will not let you depreciate land. There are probably a few rare instances where they would let you depreciate land if the land got totally ruined by an oil spill or something. There are probably a few exceptions, but they are so few about it, you don't even have to worry about it. The principle is land cannot be depreciated. Few exceptions, but the land cannot be depreciated, okay? The property, the building on the land can be depreciated. So, for example, one of our speakers, Jerry Hunter, came and he spoke right in this very room where I am for our entrepreneur seminar. He had a real dilemma on his hands from his GPS tracking business that he started from scratch, from nothing. His GPS tracking company that now is involved in over 120 countries around the world, and they track, trucks and vans and so forth for trucking companies and construction companies and so forth. Well, he has a real dilemma on his hands. He clears $5 million a year in profit from that business. That's a real problem, isn't it, Rachel?
Yes.
So he goes, oh my goodness, I gotta figure out a way of paying taxes right through the nose. Now this is a problem that you wish to have, right, Rachel?
Yeah. Sure.
It's funny. I'm turning red because it's funny because I had a good year in stock option trading this last year, and I'm going to be paying taxes right through the nose this year. I'm going to be writing a huge check because I didn't have enough taken out of my check at the university for my taxes, and in fact, I may end up having to even pay a penalty because I didn't have enough withheld, because I'm going to have to write a giant check. So I've been scrambling before April 15th to find out any tax deductions and so forth that I forgot about. So you go through all this list. Well, depreciation is a big one. Depreciation is a big one. So one of the things that Jerry Hunter did to solve his massive tax dilemma is out of that $5 million that he clears every year, he has to pay about $2.5 million in taxes from that, and that's counting his federal tax and his state tax, and then any particular type of other taxes that he's going to have. So he pays about half of that in taxes. So he would like to pay less taxes. Well, depreciation, and he shared this in his talk. He was having trouble finding a place to park his airplane. Another problem that we don't have, right, Rachel? It's hard to even identify with this, right? He couldn't find a place to park his airplane, so down in Oklahoma City at Sundance Airport, he just bought it for $10 million. So now he has a place to park his airplane. Well, he did that for a second reason. He did it for tax reasons, because now that $10 million airport that he bought, he's going to have some depreciation expenses on all the buildings, on the hangars, on the runway, on the tower. He's going to have some really nice tax write-offs on that airport, right? Sundance Airport in Oklahoma City. So anyway, the point is depreciation is a big, big item when it comes to tax deductions. Now, how you compute depreciation can be done in a variety of ways. One of the things is a straight line depreciation. That's what we've already gone over. We already went over that. The straight line depreciation means every year the same amount gets depreciated. Well, there was a lot of people that said, well, that's not fair. Most items in real life, they depreciate fastest right at the front, right at the front end of the ownership. So in fact, my wife reminded me that after only being married for 1 year, she goes, wow, you're worth a lot less than you were when we first got married. No, I'm just kidding. But that usually happens on cars and trucks and buildings and so forth. Brand new items, whether it's a computer, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's an automobile, truck, whatever, it goes down in value very, very quickly at the front end. So straight line depreciation method doesn't really do justice. So the IRS says, okay, we're going to allow alternate methods of depreciation. One of these is going to be the declining balance method. So we're going to talk about that one on Friday. Okay? The one that we're going to talk about today, it's a units of production method. Now I want you to turn to page 392. Hopefully you have your book with you today. Page 392. All right. Page 392. Because I don't know how well you're going to be able to read this on the document cam, but we'll give it a shot anyway. Now the whole point of having alternate depreciation methods is to make it more fair, to make it fairer to businesses. That's really the point. Now the IRS has come up with even some more ways, because they call it even bonus depreciation at the front end of a loan. Bonus depreciation, let's do some focus here, let's zoom in. Okay. And sometimes, in fact, the IRS even has a name for one type of bonus type of depreciation. It's a Section 179 depreciation. Oh, raise your hand if you've taken a tax course. Any of you taken a tax course yet? Yeah. Was that one tiny little hand that you didn't want me to see? It's okay. It's a Section 179 expense, so they let you just expense out some things that normally you would take years to take the depreciation into account. But the whole concept of depreciation says that every year an item is worth less than what it was before. We've already gone through a number of examples. Every year the item is worth less than it was before. And so consequently, in a business setting, that's a big deal. You're losing value on a vehicle. Well, that means that money is lost in your business. And if you were to sell that vehicle, what the IRS is doing is by allowing you to capture that depreciation, the IRS is allowing you to say, you don't have to sell your vehicle to claim that loss of depreciation. All right? Because if the IRS did not allow depreciation, I realize this is not a tax course, but you got to get the context of this. Because if the IRS did not allow depreciation, a business would be forced to do probably one of two things. A business would either be forced to every year in December sell all their vehicles so that they could rebuy in January, and that way they could capture all of that depreciation. All right? But that still wouldn't help them on their building. So the other thing it would force businesses to do is to lease or to rent property, to lease vehicles and so forth, so that they could get that as a deduction right in that particular year. So the IRS says, all right, we're going to allow depreciation. So this makes it actually fair. Now, on this page here, 392, we're going to go through the units of production method. All right. The units of production method doesn't use passage of time to determine the depreciation. It just uses, it calculates the depreciation according to how much the company uses the asset. So, a simple example would be on the number of miles driven. So if you did it on a units of production method, instead of saying how old the unit is, or how old it is, you would just say, well, what's the life? For example, if this were a printing press, and you were in a printing company, and you were printing various things. I don't think any of you said a printing company, but anyway, if you were going to have a printing company, instead of doing the number of years, because see, a printer, like a big commercial printer, it's going to wear out, not just on the basis of how old it is, but how many copies did you print with it. So a commercial printer might be able to print 10 million copies. So what you're going to do is, you're going to say, all right, if we print 10 million copies is the life of this printer. In fact, just the other day, I think it was Robert that was asking some really good questions that were kind of related to this units of production method. He was starting to ask some really good questions, Robert. I don't know if you recall, but at least that's the way I interpreted them. It's the... Oh, yeah, this is the question you asked, Robert. You asked about my motorhome. See, Robert asked, I was asking about depreciation of my motorhome. Robert asked a very good units of production method question. What is the life of that motorhome? See, Robert, that was an outstanding question from a units of production standpoint, because what is the life, how many miles will the motorhome last? That's like in the case of this commercial printer, how many copies will it print? Well, if it prints 10 million copies, and then as soon as you print 1 million copies, you've used up 10% of the life of that printer. Now, in your first year of your printing company, you're probably not going to even print up 1 million copies. But let's just pretend you did. So you had a really good first year. You had a great marketing department or whatever. You were well funded. And so the first year you printed 1 million copies. Well, the second year you printed 2 million copies. Now, hopefully you're following this. Just in case you're not, let me go to my computer here on my printer example. Okay, this is a commercial printer. And the commercial printer, it prints 10 million copies. Okay, so the first year, let's say you print 1 million copies. So as far as your units of production depreciation method, you've used up what percent of the life of this commercial printer, Robert? 10%. You've used up 10%. So you should be, by a units of production method, you should be able to deduct 10% of the cost of this printer in that year one. Now in year two, let's say your business really improved, and you did 2 million copies. You printed 2 million copies the second year. So the percent of depreciation that you should be able to claim that second year is how much, Shay? What 2 million is what percent of of 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
20%. That is 20. Yeah, it's 20%. So you've used up 20% in your second year. So your depreciation is not going to be the same every year. So we're keeping the numbers easy. Let's say this commercial printer costs $100,000. So the depreciation that you would be able to write off as an expense on your Internal Revenue Service, on your, it would be on the Schedule C. When you're on your business, how much money would you write off in depreciation that first year, Wyatt?
The first year is $10,000.
$10,000 is correct. And then how much would you be able to write off the second year, Rachel?
$20,000.
$20,000. So the first year you'd write off $10,000, and the second year you write off $20,000. So you can see it's not going to be the same every year. And then the third year, if we proceed to the third year, your business has kept growing, and so the third year you printed 30 million copies, and what percent of the cost of the printer would you get to write off there, Courtney?
30%.
You'd be able to write 30% off, and the actual dollar amount of depreciation that you get to write off in year 3 would be how much, Robert?
50,000.
Yeah, $30,000. You'd write off $30,000 to 30% of the $100,000, so you get to write off 30%. Now, in the fourth year, a recession hit, and you only printed 500,000 copies that year. Well, that fourth year, what percent would be of your original price would be your depreciation, Wyatt?
5%, or you?
Yep, 5%. That's it. Half, you see, I'm making the numbers easy, so I'm being nice. The reason I'm making the numbers easy is so that you don't get lost in the numbers, so you understand the concept. In real life, the numbers are not going to land this nice, are they? But 5% is going to be it, so you'll only be able to write off, dollar-wise, how much in year 4, Shay? Yeah, $5,000. That's all you'll be able to write off in year 4. The point is, you can't, and this is not a straight line depreciation method. Now, if you did a straight line depreciation method, you says, well, this printer's probably going to last me about 10 years. Then what you could do is just every year write off 10,000. Okay? Every year you'd write off 10,000. By a unit production method, units of production method, you could write off the actual amount every year depending upon its use. So consequently, at least in the example I just gave you about the commercial printer, you'd be better off using a units of production depreciation method than you would be by a straight line depreciation method. So, let's go back to the document camp. And again, if you can't read this, you need to be looking at page 392. So if you're taking this class online, for example, be sure you're looking at page 392. So they give you an example of this Ajax company buying equipment. They estimate how many units the equipment can produce. Let's assume the equipment has a useful life of 4,000 units, and the following formula is used to calculate the equipment's depreciation for the units of production method. So there's going to be the depreciation per unit. Now this is going to be per unit. It's similar to my example of the printing method, but you see, in fact, I could have had the depreciation per unit, actual per copy, which is valuable when if you're in a printing company. Printing companies, they do know exactly what the depreciation is per unit. Now, here's here's how it relates back to our printing company. I think you follow through this one right in here. It's the cost minus residual value. So the residual value just simply means when you're all done with this commercial printer, for example, when the commercial printer, it's over. It's not very reliable anymore. It's out of date. You can't hardly even get parts for it anymore. It's difficult. The parts have to be sent from China. Not very many people are carrying the parts. It means your business is going to be shut down a lot. The value of your printer, it's not zero, is it though? It's worth something. That is called the residual value. So when this printer is all used up, this $100,000 printer, it's probably still going to be worth $1,000 or $2,000 at the end, right? That's called the residual. That's called the residual value. So that's what this is over here. The residual value. The cost was $2,500. The residual value. This is for this a piece of equipment. When it's all used up, it was still worth $500. The total estimated units produced is 4,000 units. Now this is going to be, let me get this back, I slid off the page here. 2,500 is what the piece of equipment cost. When it was all ready to be junked out, it still was worth 500. That's your residual cost. Subtract those two, you get $2,000. It could produce 4,000 units, and so you would take the 2,000 divided by 4,000 to get 50 cents per unit. Okay? Now, once you have the unit depreciation, now what you can do is take that times the number of units produced. So when you know it's 50 cents per unit, and you produce 1,000 units in a year, you can take that 50 cents times 1,000, and that'll give you $500 for the total depreciation allowed for that particular year. All right. Now let's back this up to we're almost out of time. We're going to back this up to our printer example. This is our printer example. So I'm going to erase a lot of this stuff here. Let's erase all of this good stuff. The concept of units of production method just simply means it's not based upon time, it's based upon use. That's what you need to know. That's the concept, okay? The concept is it's not based upon time, it's based upon use. So, let's say, for fun and giggles, that the residual value of this unit right here, when it's all used up, it's still worth 10 grand. It's got a lot of good parts in it. You could either scrap it out for the parts, or there's some companies that wouldn't mind buying it just as not as their main printer, but it would have, let's just say, $10,000 worth of value. So, to use this formula on the page of 392 to get the depreciation per unit, to get the depreciation per unit, it's equal to the original cost minus the residual value, and then you're going to have to divide that by the total estimated units. So the total estimated, in this case, total number of copies made. That's what it'll be in this case. So we're going to take the $100,000 and we're going to subtract, I said the residual value was 10,000, and then we're going to have to divide it by 10 million, because I said this commercial printer could print out 10 million copies. Now this is only going to be the depreciation per unit. There's more expenses to printing, isn't it? You got the cost of the paper, the cost of the ink, you know, the ink cartridges or however the system is going to be for the ink. This is just depreciation only. So what's 100,000? Well, I'm out of time. 100,000 minus 10,000 is 90,000. Now you got to divide that by 10 million. Divide it by 10 million. You start dividing numerator and denominator. It's only going to be 9 over 1,000. So 9 divided by 1,000. Move the decimal point 3 places to the left. And so it is approximately 9/10 of 1 cent. Because this was dollars. So about a penny a copy for your depreciation every time you make a copy. So if you print out those that we did, see now the example I gave you originally, I didn't take into account the residual value, did I? So this is more accurate when you actually subtract out that residual value. That's all the time we have for today. You guys did great today. I appreciate it.